We're getting a really good group here. Wonderful.
And I can see very new faces for the first time. I think so.
And
Nice to see you.
Please, everyone, feel free to come on with your faces in the beginning if you have capacity for that. It's always nice to feel that we are sitting around the same virtual table.
Hi, hello. Afternoon. Please quickly shout your name so that you know you are.
Oh, that was a while ago. Good, nice.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone. So good to see a lot of new faces in here. I will be the Zoom host today, and I just wrote in the chat that it's very nice if you check in and tell us where you're joining from, your name and maybe your affiliation. That would be great. Welcome.
Yeah, that's great. Please let us hear from you. Festival joining today is Sarah. Nice.
Yeah.
Colleagues.
Good to see you.
Coming along, yes.
Perfect.
And we hope to have a lively discussion in the chat today. So if you're shy about speaking up, be bold about writing in your perspectives. So
that's true. So, Jen, with your permission, we would like to begin at 5 minutes past the hour.
Sounds excellent.
Yeah, we have about 28 people already joining in, meaning that we have more than half of what we thought would be joining.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Hi,
Good
Christy.
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Nice.
And now
Yeah.
Wilma is coming in. Wilma, the seniors, they like to be here.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Paul is here as well. He's a senior. So some of you are becoming seniors. I know that for sure.
Yeah. But of course, everyone wants to be here.
Yes, this is where it's happening today.
Yes.
And we need
so glad to see David. So glad to see David here. David, how are you doing?
Okay.
So early to join, Samuel. That's great.
Great. And remember, once we officially start, please let's remember to mute our mics so that we don't have any disruption.
Hi,
We'll have
Alison. Nice to see you checking in the chat. Please follow Alison and tell us a little about yourself in the chat. Gladys on board. Hi, Gladys.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Oh, Gladys.
Nice to see you here.
Yes.
Always
Hi,
good to have
Jane.
you with us, Gladys. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
These mentors, senior scholars have refused to leave the NextGen.
I know.
I don't know what Gladys is doing here. Gladys, what are you doing here? Gladys, what are you doing here, Gladys?
I have to take on my children, you know.
Yes.
No.
I have to be mentors. Yeah, what you are talking about, it's important to me. So, yes.
Okay, perfect. Over to you, Jen, so that we officially begin. We are 6 minutes past the time.
Fine. Thank you very much. And I do appreciate the seniors coming on. You are indeed mentors and very good ones at that. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. My name is Jane Somerton. I'm the VREF Scientific Advisor. I'm standing in today for our director, Henrik Nolmark, who couldn't join us today, but he sends his best to all of you and was a little sad he couldn't make it, actually. But this is how things go. I'd just like to make a couple of comments besides welcoming you all to this event. At VREF, we have always had initiatives to support next generation scholars, by which we mean advanced master students, PhD candidates, and early career scholars up until 5 years after the PhD degree. We've always had initiatives, opportunities for support, etc. But now actually we're taking it to the next level. So this is the very first cross-program VREF research forum where we're gathering people from young scholars from 2 different programs this time, the walking program and the MAC program, to present their work. We realize, of course, that our 3 major programs, which have to do with mobility and access in African cities, with informal and shared mobility, and with walking, this cohort has a lot of common research interests. And I'm sure everybody recognizes that. So we will be having a series of research forums across the board, gathering scholars from all 3 programs and from our urban freight program as well. When I say we're taking through the next level, I say we are actively planning a number of stepped up initiatives besides seminars and webinars such as this. We will be having short courses. We will have capacity building events. We will have opportunities for mobility grants and scholarships. Some of these are continuing, other of them are being strengthened now. So please join us for the ride. So today, this is the first, as I say, and we're very happy to have our moderator, Pashalin Basil. We miss our co-moderator, who is Robert Mbunda, excuse me, from the University of Namibia. But we are very confident that Pashalin will be more than able to guide us through today. One other thing before I close, if you are not on our list of young scholars, if you feel that you're not on the list to join the community, please contact us as soon as you can, because I think you really want to be part of what's going on. And with that, I say welcome again and take it away, Pashalin. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Jen, for that welcoming and brief remarks on where we are at the moment as the NextGen community. And I want to appreciate also the support of Karin behind the scenes, doing a lot of logistical and Zoom support. Thank you so much, Karin. David, who has been part of this planning with us, so we want to really appreciate you. And again, for bringing all of us, and Jen has just told us why we are now all VREF NextGen community. And why are we saying we are NextGen? And I'm sure some of us are wondering why we are saying senior scholars, mentors. Some have refused to go and they have stuck with us. This is a forum for for advanced masters, students, for PhD candidates, for early career researchers or scholars. And I think this concept is a little bit debatable because we talk of early career researchers, people within 5 years of their PhD. And I think this is something that we can also discuss further outside this network. Who are the early career researchers? But allow me to again officially welcome you to today's session, where we'll be exploring viable walking solutions in Sub-Saharan Africa. We know all issues that we are experiencing when it comes to walking. And Walk 21 just convened a Walk 21 conference in Lisbon, Portugal. And we were saying everybody walks. We know, yes, we are walking, but there are challenges that are associated with our day-to-day walking. For instance, lack of or limited infrastructure for walking, issues of safety and security, issues of long distances. And this time round, in this our first ever VREF NextGen forum, we are bringing on board a diverse set of presenters, discussants who are very experienced in their work, and they'll be sharing with us what they have been doing. And we will also have, after the 3 presenters and the discussants speak, we will also have 2 of our NextGen scholars also sharing with us their journey or their story, how they found themselves in working as researcher. So allow me to quickly bring on board Maria Josso, who is our first presenter. And Maria will be talking to us about transforming the unwalkable city, and she'll be sharing with us the knowledge, practices, and interventions for a more inclusive future of walking in Africa. And who is Maria Jose? And I'm happy this time around we're also bringing very new faces in this forum, and that is the beauty of this network. We want people to share, people to network, people to learn from one another. So Maria is trained in economics and sustainable development, and she has focused on bringing forward knowledge-based strategies to build social and environmental justice in urban areas. Since Maria's first master's degree in environment and development, she has worked with local, national, and global institutions in Latin America and the Caribbean, leveraging information to identify, monitor, and evaluate programs and policies. Her career started as a civil servant in Bogota. Since then, she specialized as an analyst of urbanization, working with the UN Habitat, the International Organization for Migration, the IOM, and the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean. As a researcher, she has developed knowledge resources to support local governments and public institutions in decision-making processes while collaborating with diverse stakeholders. Maria has contributed to projects such as the inclusion of recycling workers in Colombian cities, waste management systems, leading the diagnosis of the capacity of 6 cities in Latin America to investigate Venezuelan migrants, and as a researcher in the Walking Cities Lab. I now give this opportunity to Maria, and Maria, you have 15 minutes to make your presentation. Over to you.
Thank you, Pascaline, for that thorough presentation. I think I have very little to add to that resume that was presented. Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be part of this forum, mainly on behalf of the Walking Cities Lab family, because all of the research that we've been doing for the past 4 years on walking in Sub-Saharan Africa, it's been a collaborative process of partners and us at UCL. Today, I'm going to focus predominantly on our last project, which is about transforming unwalkable cities. The knowledge, practices, and interventions for an inclusive future of walking in African cities. So all of this began with a partnership between the Osaka University Social Solution Initiative and the Development Planning Unit at University College London that became this Walking Cities Lab to understand everyday walking environments, African cities, but mainly on how to transform these unwalkable places where the majority of people walk into something that is safe, accessible, and enjoyable. So with the QR code that is on the screen, you can access the webpage where all of the publications are uploaded and free to access. You can also meet the team, that's the whole family. And the beginning of this journey was in the aim to understand the interplay between informal settlement development and walking practices. So the journey began in Freetown by trying to understand walking conditions as like the observed determinants of walking experiences, but also the practices and the experiences of pedestrians under these conditions. The pilot study with the methodology and a framework was implemented in Moyiwa, an informal settlement in Freetown, in Sierra Leone. And the beginning of this was to coming from the notion that there was very little empirical evidence about walking in general as a mode of transport, but specifically about walking in settlements with precarious conditions of shelter, but also of all sorts of basic public infrastructure. From there, we went to Maputo. In this case, we weren't looking into the observed characteristics, we were looking into the walking practice and experience and how this differs in the center and the periphery of the city, and how is this related to the experience in terms of status, in terms of stigma of pedestrians, and aspirations of having a different mode that is more comfortable, and how this relates to the right to the city as an equitable access to all of the benefits that it entails to live in a city. And more recently, it was Accra and Maputo. Both of those entailed understanding the working conditions of these specific neighborhoods that we addressed. In Accra, there were 2 neighborhoods, one center and one in the periphery, but both low-income neighborhoods. And in Maputo, the novelty, which was very interesting, was to use walking and understanding the experiences and the conditions for walking as a way of evaluating a planned intervention. So there was an intervention happening in Chamanculosi, which is a neighborhood near the airport in Maputo. And the idea was to see how the impact of this intervention, that had been a planned intervention, through the eyes of pedestrians as a way of understanding the results of such intervention. So coming together, and thanks to the VREF Fund, we managed to relate these cases, bring an engagement to policy and community, and communicate the findings and the tools that we had been testing and implementing throughout the 4 years that we had been working in Freetown, Accra, and Maputo. For that, it was a big partnership coming together from the original partners in Osaka University and the DPU, Development Planning Unit, to Architects Without Borders in Mozambique, to universities in Ghana, the University of Cape Coast, and the University for Sustainable Environment and Sustainable Development. The original partners in Freetown, which was the Sierra Leone Urban Research Center, and then WOC 21, like a big help in communication and engagement, as most of you know. So the research design of the project was shaped towards 3 main areas. So our knowledge co-production, which had been a key asset of Walking Cities Lab throughout the whole process, which was actually creating empirical evidence about how people walk in unwalkable cities, meaning these places where the infrastructure is very limited. Then it was to enrich this knowledge because part of the aim was actually to transform. So for that, we required to put this knowledge into action, and that meant enriching it through, on one side, creating tools that could be implemented with local resources in different cities, but also engaging with policy, engaging with those people that had the power to make decisions and to transform the walking environment. And finally, creating capacity building in terms of knowledge production, but also so to communicate in ways that weren't limited to academia and publications, but in the forms of blogs and webinars and engagement with students at the universities where we and the partners were working. So this meant that our research methods, at the core of our research methods, was engaging with communities, with policymakers, and with technical experts. So the first stage of this was co-producing the knowledge, right? We had this based on geolocated surveys, semi-structured interviews, and participatory mapping, all to understand the walking conditions, but also the practices and experiences of diverse pedestrians and in different temporalities. One of the things that happened at the beginning of the project was that we understood that 2 key issues was the time of the day and the season for walking infrastructure, but also the fact that walking as a woman or at a certain age is very different than walking as a young man, and the identity of people walking was very fundamental, and the destination. So also mapping not only the sidewalks, the traffic lights and so on, but the accessibility dimension of walking, meaning where people work, where people go to enjoy themselves, and that compared to where they live. So something that Pascaline mentioned at the beginning, like how long were the distances in terms of accessibility. So as I was saying, we started by mapping demographics or like tracing the demographic of the people that we were asking for their experiences. And this meant different characteristics, of course, such as like where do they live, but also the occupation. This all done through the same app that we were using to map the location of walking. So then we go to understand the practices. So basically the where, the when, and for how long. And these include the geolocation of their path to understand from a spatial perspective how people was walking. This based on an experience that we had in Freetown, in Moiva, that was that, of course, from the data that we could obtain from, for example, satellite pictures, there was no way of knowing where the path for walking were. And we also understood that in different seasons, different paths for walking emerged in these settlements. So like the very rapid changing nature of the built environment in these settlements. So we mapped path to economic activities, but also the location of the destinations. And based on following to that, it was the experience, right? Because it wasn't only about like the conditions of the practices of walking, but also how those practices were experienced by the diverse pedestrians in terms of social identities. And for these, we mapped the feelings, how enjoyable it was, but also like where these feelings happen, in the sense of like there were streets that were avoided and there were streets that were avoided for a specific reason. So that's when the more semi-structured interview happened, to try and understand what were the explanations for these paths to be avoided. So I'm showing you different outputs from the cities, basically for the neighborhoods that we worked throughout the project. And coming from this attempt to, or this method to co-produce information about the empirical conditions of walking, the researchers were kind of helping themselves with pictures to understand better what the map was telling them and what the surveys were telling them. And in one of the co-producing workshops in methodology that we did throughout the project, what emerged was that it was key to have this image of how the path looked beyond the written response. And what the researchers were doing was actually activating their geolocation on their phones, so very, very low technology in terms of resources. And from this, it came one way of actually understanding the walking environment and the walking experience, and it was taking pictures and geolocate them and make it part of the analysis. So as you see on the right side of the screen, you can see there's like how the sidewalk was blocked, but then understanding that this was a blockage meant from like someone putting their furniture, where the sewage was uncovered and full of garbage or not, where the street vendors were walking. And so that it became like a live methodology that gave us much more input into understanding how people walk and the conditions under which they walk. On the second dimension, that was the knowledge enrichment and policy engagement, we put together a range of methodologies. And when I keep saying we, it's because this came from all of the partners in the project. It was a process of collaborative thinking in how we could engage politicians and the community. And the one that was very successful was throughout the Sustainable Mobility Week, we did Jane's walk with the politicians that had never or very rarely had walked beyond one block in their houses. So this meant also kind of creating this empathetic look into how tough or how difficult it was to walk in certain parts of the place. We did also breakout groups, putting together technical experts, policymakers, and community in the different cities to think about the issues of walking, prompting them with icebreakers in which we try to probe like what is the people that is the most vulnerable when walking, what did they think that walking was supposed to do in a city, what simply it meant for them to walk, and that way get them talking into, okay, this is a way of, throughout the evidence that we have collected in the conditions and the experiences of walking, how the politicians and the technical experts can be like involved in a way that is empathetic, but is also informed in the actual conditions on the ground. A form of knowledge enrichment and policy engagement that was part of the project as well was digitizing the knowledge of the community as a way for them to do advocacy, so as a tool for advocacy. So in the sense that, it's very important to say that is digitizing because the knowledge was there already. The tool that came with the project was making it part of imagery and geolocation. And in Dome and Newton and Chamanculo, this was done by young researchers that were either part of the community or were part of the Federation for the Urban Poor. And this was like a process also of the following dimension, that was the one of knowledge sharing and capacity building. So throughout the process, the data collection, the data analysis, there was the involvement of people on the ground, meaning people that lived in these communities or were already doing research about the neighborhoods. And one of the main findings, or the thing that called the attention, was that a lot of these communities were already doing activities to transform their space to make it more walkable, such as street lighting, but we also see activities of like building speed bumps, kiosks for some sort of economic activity, urban furniture. So we started mapping not only the practices and the experiences and the destinations, but those conditions for walking that were created by the same pedestrians trying to navigate a non-walkable space. And the point of this was that to plan for a longer term walkable space, this bottom-up action research should inform and can inform long-term visioning and short-term advocacy, right? Also given the tools for the community to plan, to like advocate for better planning. And finally, with the experience of evaluating a planned urban intervention, it gave us a way of, it showed us that walking could be a tool to understand in a more flexible way these rapidly changing environments and make walking in public spaces a core element of the improvement of precarious neighborhoods. Finally, with the knowledge sharing and the capacity building, it was capacity building about the communities where the research was happening, but it was also capacity building in terms of the students involved in each of the universities. And here you have like two examples of dissertations, one that it got actually published, another one that is in the process of getting published. But this was the students at the DPU, but also at the universities in Ghana. So Cape Coast and the Environment and Sustainable Development University were involved in using the data that we had been co-producing for them to analyze and give their view from different frameworks and with different focuses on their master's dissertation. So these pictures that you see is like just 6 out of, we're already 9 people that have been doing their dissertations based on the data collected by the Walking Cities Lab, which gives a huge richness to the process. Just to conclude, these 5 years of working on the working conditions in informal settlements and trying to transform it into action, into knowledge that can be actioned, brought us to this proposed framework to frame walking as a very complex issue. And I think I want to call your attention to the bottom part of this framework, which is we started by trying to understand how individuals with diverse social identities experience walking and practice walking, and that gave us like an idea of the observed and the reported subjective determinants of a walking experience and a walking practice. But that took us to understand there are also collective practices that happen through walking, and those collective practices mean that also influence the outcomes and the determinants of the experience of walking. All of these, of course, transversed by the structural conditions of an environment. So there were some main learnings and challenges in the collaborative path to position walking in the limelight. I feel like there's these 4 are for me the key, the core learnings and challenges that we address. In the co-production of knowledge about walking with disadvantaged communities, helped us bust misconceptions about walking and weakens aspirations for ownership, but also a key value of the process of research was the valuing and acknowledging local ingenuity. So all of these interventions that had been going on from pedestrians to shape their walking environment and the improvisations of it, so valuing this process, had strengthened planning to transform unwalkable cities. So coming from a top-bottom approach, so top-down approach, might not have all of the power and the knowledge and the adaptability and resilience that these underground interventions with some value could have. And then collaborating with communities to understand the unwalkable cities, create multiple added values, which are like all the things that I've mentioned throughout the presentation. And finally, creating this knowledge practice exchange hub, such as the Walking Cities Lab, has enabled sustainability of collaborative community engaging projects that we haven't had funding throughout the whole process so continuously, but the fact that this hub exists has meant that we keep connected with the partners and we keep developing as each partner can, the methodologies and the knowledge that we've been producing. So the output in terms of researchers of like tools for research and all of these learnings and challenges is available again in the Walking Cities Lab webpage. And it's this really nice research note that Walk21 helped us develop. And I invite you to check it out because it's a really nice output from the whole process of the last project that we did. Thank you so much. I hope I didn't took too much over my time.
Thank you so much, Maria. You certainly went, you took 2 more minutes, which is fine. And this is quite interesting, what is happening across the 3 cities. But before I get into more details, I'll ask all of us to put your questions in the chat, and we'll have a session to really talk about the issues. Allow me at this moment to bring on board Consuelo Araneda, who is going to be our first discussant, and will share her reflections about Maria's work. Consuelo, you can start coming. She's an architect from the University of Chile with an MSc in urban design from the Technical University of Berlin. She has professional practice as focused on urban planning projects, mobility, and public space design. In recent years, she has worked in the pedestrian reconquest, exploring everyday walking experiences with children, students, and women. Her latest project looks at the production of space through the lens of migrant women and the impact of the mud species environment. She's interested in the exploratory walks we take to discover new places and how we relate to the landscape as we move. Consuelo, you have 5 minutes to share your reflections.
Hi, thank you. And thank you, Maria Jose, for the nice presentation. I already knew a bit of your project because we were together last year in Kigali. And it's super nice to see it like condensed in this presentation. I have some comments, but also maybe you can like comment as well. There are comments and questions. I was super interested in the part, maybe you mentioned a bit less, but I read it in your presentation about changing the narrative and how the impact of changes in this narrative around walking, around the possibility of moving by walking and taking it as a mode of transport. How is the impact of doing it not just among the communities, but also to the stakeholders? Like, and that's why I was so interested in the Jane's Walk you organized with the stakeholders to like put them personally on the street, walking, having the experience themselves, not just from a theoretical point of view, but just like experiencing it personally. So I would want to ask you, maybe you want to add something to it, like how was it when they were there? Were they happy? Were they keen to do it? And what was the output like afterwards? Why do they think, your question, why do they think that walking is less considered a mode of transport, although it's actually quite cheap, actually quite easy, but for the stakeholders is one of the less noticeable modes of transport?
Yeah, so I think the reactions on the Jane Walk were to be expected. They were first very confused that we were actually making them go and walk. And the walk was planned by Architects Without Borders in a way that they had different kinds of roads. So from the walking path that have been traced by people informally, but also highways and so on. So the reaction was a bit of a shock of like this is not like at all what I have experienced before, and it's very uncomfortable, and they were very scared about the cars coming because there weren't any sidewalks for them to walk. So the whole reaction was a bit of like, okay, yeah, we knew it wasn't pleasant, but this is very scary and not enjoyable. And they were also like a bit kind of shocked that they had to do it throughout the workshop because it was supposed just to be a workshop. And then the reflections on why like the change of narrative was also quite interesting to talk to the engineers, for example, in Freetown, where the notion of thinking about walking was not at all related to transport. So transport is big avenues, transport is BRT, like bus rapid transit. So it's big, hard infrastructure and how many people can be transported and in how fast of a time. So trying to make them think about walking was hard to detach it from. Walking is health, walking is in a green, leisurely space, and then transport is another thing. So that was tricky, but I think part of it was a success in the sense that they started thinking, okay, yeah, you can walk to get the BRT and you can walk to, and in Freetown, this has become like an actual part of their thinking in the Ministry of Transport and in the road and safety construction. So it was, it helped, it showed us how it helps to like bring the conversation again and again towards walking, not only as healthy, leisurely walks, but actually as a mode of transport that is the one that most people does. There was one anecdote that if I'll tell it very briefly, which I thought it was really interesting. She was one of the members of the Ministry of Transport in Freetown when we were having this conversation and presenting the results from the Moyiwa case study. He was telling us that he started walking because for health issues. He started walking to work, which was like 3 or 5 blocks from his house. But then his wife got a call asking if he was sane or if they had any money issues, because why else would he be walking to work? So it got such so much attention, him walking to his work, that he had to stop because his wife was getting calls being like, what, do you need money? Or it's like, are you healthy enough? Like, have you lost your mind? So that was kind of gave us in one of the blogs that the partners wrote about the results in Freetown, that there's this anecdote which tells you a lot of how the process went. Yeah.
Quite interesting conversation happening there, and this can be picked up, and you can also check in the chat. I can see some questions coming, but we'll have a session for this after all of us have made their presentation. Thank you so much, Maria. And now it is time to bring the second presenter. This is a presentation that has been prepared by 2 presenters, that is Tiffany, Angel, Kihivia, and Eric. And I just ask Tiffany if you can start loading your slides as I introduce you. She's an environmental expert and physical planner with extensive experience. Tiffany has contributed to projects including land use planning, development control, and the conducting of environmental impact assessments and audits. Tiffany holds a bachelor's degree in environmental planning and management from Kenyatta University and a master's in urban and regional planning from the University of Nairobi. Alongside academic credentials, she's a programmer skilled in JavaScript and Python. Currently, she's conducting research on sustainable transportation with specific emphasis on innovative urban mobility strategies and infrastructure planning. Her work aims to enhance the resilience and efficiency of urban environments, fostering sustainable transportation solutions that benefit communities and promote livability. Quickly, Eric Abuya is a physical and an urban planner with a BA in planning, MA in planning, that is awaiting graduation at the University of Nairobi. He has a certificate in writing, leading and managing research projects and projects in transport studies, Faculty of Engineering and Built Environment, that is a VREF UCT course training at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. He's a graduate member of the Kenya Institute of Planners, and he has 5 years experience working in the public and private sectors. He also served as a part-time lecturer at the University of Nairobi, and he has participated in physical and land use planning, that is preparation of the Rakanithi County Spatial Plan, and among other projects. His key interests include creative innovations to enhance walkability, inclusivity aspects in mobility, that is physical, environmental, social, economic, and governance inclusivity. I believe, Tiffany, you are making the presentation on behalf of the 2 of you. Over to you, Tiffany. You have 15 minutes.
Thank you very much, Pascaline. I'm very excited to be presenting our presentation. It was prepared together with Eric, and it focuses on implementing creative innovations for walkability, mainly to enhance walkability as a connector, using a case of Mwindimbingu Street in Nairobi CBD. We'll begin by defining walkability. Just to really understand what it means. So it refers to how friendly and accessible an area is for walking. Basically, it's a measure for how well a place encourages safe, convenient, and comfortable walking. It's key in enhancing safety, promoting public health by encouraging active mobility, it boosts economic development by allowing pedestrians to interact with not only businesses on the formal sector, but also the informal sector, factoring in street vendors. It also promotes environmental sustainability, while also pushing for interconnected and more resilient urban spaces. The main objective of our study was to improve walkability as a connector within the Nairobi CBD, with Mwindimbingu Street as the key focus of our study. Mwindimbingu Street runs for around 568 meters, connecting University Way to Kenyatta Avenue. As you can see, it's here highlighted in red. And it links major nodes within the CBD, such as the University of Nairobi main campus, Jivanji Gardens, City Market, all the way to Kencom bus station, which is a main transport stop within the CBD. Despite it being a key connector within the city, it faces several issues. I'd like to highlight the three main ones, which would be the narrow and poorly maintained sidewalks. There's the encroachment by street vendors, which you can see in the bottom left picture over here, as well as unsafe road pedestrian crossings, with increased pedestrian and vehicular conflict, as depicted in the bottom right picture, where a motorcycle was trying to cut across pedestrian provisions to get to the other side of the road. So these are some of the issues that our study is addressing, and proposes planning interventions and street designs to tackle this while enhancing walkability. Our study was underpinned by various theories, models, and frameworks, but just to touch on a few, it relied heavily on the new urbanism concept that mainly advocates for compact mixed-use developments where active mobility such as walking and cycling are prioritized over the car-centric designs that we have. It also took the approach of sustainable urban mobility planning, which highly integrates active mobility with public transport, thus having a positive effect on the air quality by lowering the emissions from the transportation sector within the city. And it also relied on the complete streets design approach, which advocates for designing streets for all users. So be it cyclists, be it pedestrians, down to the vehicular access, all the user needs are provided for and adequately met with this approach, as opposed to the traditional more car-centric design that is prevalent within Sub-Saharan Africa, and it's very evident within the CBD. The study also was underpinned by various legal, policy, and institutional documents and frameworks. So just to touch on a few, of course, beginning with the Sustainable Development Goals, which most of you are aware of, but specifically touching on SDG 11, 13, and 17. 11 mostly advocating for inclusive, safe, resilient, and the development of sustainable cities, while 13 pushes us to take action to combat climate change and its effects, so promoting ways to adapt to the climate change effects while also mitigating and promoting more resilient cities. When it comes to Vision 2030, we can see this national development strategy was put in place mainly to boost the nation's economic status. But aside from that, it also advocates for the development of an integrated transportation system that highlights walking as a key component of accessibility when it comes to urban and rural mobility, but mostly focusing on the urban landscape. We also have the key actors who are responsible for the more transportation and mobility management within the urban and rural spaces. So for Nairobi, it will fall under the Kenya Urban Roads Authority, who mainly manage the design, the construction, and the upkeep of roads within the urban areas. And they're mandated to ensure that NMT infrastructure is incorporated in all road projects. We also have the National Transport Safety Authority. This authority mainly focuses on promoting road safety, especially for the vulnerable people. So that will include the elderly, children, and people with disabilities. And lastly, we come to the county government of Nairobi that is mainly in charge of maintaining the public infrastructure while also enforcing zoning regulations. So we see all these actors and legal documents come into play, and they're key in promoting walkability within the city. And we can see that under the right conditions and provisions, we'll be able to achieve walkability since the provisions have already been put in place, and it's a matter of taking action. The study's methodology relied on various methods for data collection, both for primary and secondary data. So we examined the global best practices, taking a look at cities like Copenhagen and Tokyo in relation to Nairobi, so we can be able to see how they maintain their sidewalks and pedestrian accessibility while also avoiding things like vendor congestion and pedestrian vehicular conflict. We also conducted key informant interviews with various experts such as urban planners, engineers, environmental officers, as well as architects at the county level, just to get a better understanding of what's really going on behind the scenes when it comes to planning for walkability, what projects have been able to succeed, and what are the challenges or obstacles they face when it comes to implementing solutions for walkability within the city. We also had various field survey instruments, firstly with the observation matrix we had, mostly to assess the areas of conflict or areas with high issues, monitor pedestrian patterns, take note of high risk zones, and also understand what walkability is like for the pedestrians, the business people along the street vendors as well, and also touching a little bit on the matatu operators along University Way and Kenyatta Avenue, since Mindimingo links the two highways within the CBD. From this, the study was able to highlight various issues along the street. And as mentioned earlier, it included factors like the lack of street lighting, lack of adequate and safe pedestrian crossings, those heavy pedestrian and motorcycle conflict, encroachment of street vendors onto the already very narrow and poorly maintained sidewalks. And we also noted that the design of Mindimingo Street is not very inclusive, as it lacks a pedestrian infrastructure, as well as other provisions that ensure safety for pedestrians and other NMT users. So from this, our study had various planning interventions as our proposals. So firstly, starting with adopting a universal street design. So this will take into account all the users of the pedestrian walkways. So that will be making the walkways more accessible to people with disabilities by, first of all, making them accessible to wheelchair users or other people who need mobility aids, as well as providing tactile paving for the visually impaired pedestrians, allowing them to move from point A to point B without necessarily having to rely on other people. The design also provides for street furniture for those who need to take breaks. Mindimingo Street is around 0.5 kilometer in length, which is not an easy goal or easy distance for people to meet. So we need to provide street furniture for them to take a break in the middle, regain their strength, or reorganize themselves as they continue with their journey. It's also paramount that pedestrian crossings be made more safe, especially along the route, as it's lacking in the signage, as well as traffic signs that allow for pedestrians to cross across the road. So this can be made better or enhanced with the intelligent traffic signals in order to take care of the safety aspect when it comes to walkability. When it comes to street vendor management, we've seen that along the route, there's a lot of encroachment and taking up of walking space by street vendors. And since the street vendors are really crucial to the informal economy of Nairobi, it is important that they be integrated or considered when most of these streets are being designed. So the study proposes that we create pedestrian-only zones along the street, and it will be mostly around areas where there's heavy commercial use, like around the city market, and where we can have a congregation of both formal and informal businesses or economic activities to be accessible to a majority of the pedestrians, as opposed to the setup we have now, where it's mostly deterring walkability along the route, limiting the access to the ready markets that's in place. So these vendors can be managed mainly through an ITMS, that's an intelligent transport management system. So the ATMS can be used to dynamically allocate space to vendors based on the demand, as well as the foot traffic or the different times of day. It can be used to segregate or move vendors to a specific area during peak or non-peak hours, depending on the algorithms that are set into place. And it will also be vital in managing the nature of vendors, allowing specific vendors to access various types of various areas or zones within the CBD, as opposed to letting them roam free range, which will lead to congestion, especially around the high foot traffic areas. Also, ITMS is also essential in real-time traffic monitoring and data collection. So using surveillance cameras, sensors, and also relying on the Internet of Things that can be installed along the pathways, the system will mainly serve as a tool for traffic flow management, and it can be easily used to notify the relevant authorities in case of pedestrian vehicular conflict, or in case of vendor non-compliance outside of the vendor designated zones or the pedestrian designated zones. Since Mendimingo Street is a high foot traffic area, the design seeks mainly to take advantage of this by converting the energy generated from the footsteps into kinetic energy using specialized tiles. So this energy mainly can be utilized to power the street lights or the traffic signals along the walkways, while also improving the city's energy efficiency and overall sustainability when it comes to energy use. So the tiles can be strategically placed at pedestrian crossings and zones with high foot traffic, such as the vendor-specific zones, or outside the concentrated economic activities, in order to maximize on the energy generated. We can see similar projects have been implemented in London and Abu Dhabi, and they're quite successful in enhancing urban sustainability and overall pedestrian security when it comes to walkability. So just to wrap it all up, we are basically proposing a holistic approach to urban mobility, specifically when it comes to walking. So this is an illustration of an integrated approach to street designs, and it caters to all the road users, from the vehicular road users to the active modes of transportation, mainly in order to minimize the conflict, enhance safety and inclusivity of the access routes, as well as promote sustainability within the urban setting. We see that various benefits of walkability and its enhancement include the reduction of traffic congestion and car dependency, while it also contributes to the overall economic growth through the support of formal and informal business activities and economies. The design also promotes inclusivity by catering to all members of the society, including the most vulnerable, because if it's accessible to them, then it's accessible to all. When we look at the ITMS, incorporating this technology mainly ensures the efficiency of the whole system by ensuring a positive pedestrian experience and managing all the elements that come into place and affect walkability as a whole. So by adopting a similar design across the CBD, this will put Nairobi as a city at the forefront of sustainability, mainly by promoting pedestrian-friendly urban environments while ensuring energy efficiency. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Tiffany and Eric, for sharing this quite exciting work. And I'm sure maybe someone could be asking, how viable are these innovations viable? And if they are viable, why do you have challenges in terms of implementing this? But I'm sure we'll have some time to really go into depth of this during the plenary. Allow me to bring our second discussant, who is Nisha. Nisha, you can start preparing to come and really discuss this work. So Nisha is an architect with a decade-long practice in urban research and cultural writing. She's also a PhD scholar at the Indian Institutes of Technology, that is Bombay, Mumbai, where her current research focus is looking at the diverse working practices in the Indian urban landscape, their marginalization and embedded socialites. Her research operates at the intersection of Southern urbanism, spatial justice, gender, and mobilities. Nisha, you have 5 minutes to really share your feedback or reflections towards Tiffany's and Eric's presentation.
Thank you, Pascaline. And Tiffany and Eric, very interesting presentation. And I think first I will start with my compliments that there was a very clear articulation of walkability benefits. And the presentation clearly highlighted benefits such as safety, convenience, public health, which make a compelling case for the impact of walking and walkability on urban resilience. So this clarity in a way establishes a very solid foundation which advocates for pedestrian-friendly policies. Again, along the comprehensive methodology also offered a multi perspective, trying to engage various stakeholders also and strengthening the study's relevance. And further, by proposing sustainable design elements like energy generating tiles, demonstration, and certain other demonstrations. So there's a forward thinking and commitment to eco-friendly urban planning that is being advocated for. So congratulations on that. So I am also very interested in the framing of walkability as a social connector.
Nisha, just a minute. Please stay muted. Christy, please mute yourself. Olayami, please don't share the presentation at this moment. Thank you. Sorry, Nisha.
Hello. Yeah. So as I was saying, I'm also interested in the broader framing of walkability as a connector. So one of my first propositions is that we can be also look at it as a social connector, especially in the context of global southern cities like Mumbai. That's where my practice is located. Walking is not just for transport often, but it has a very important social aspect to it. So this is also where I'm positioning my question to ask you. Within the CBD, the Central Business District of Nairobi, is walking just for transport, but is it also a social event? And in that context, the interventions that you are proposing, how do you intend to have a balance between the interventions and handling of the social dynamics? So this is one of my first questions. My second observation rather is also again rooted from my own work, where I am interested in Southern urbanism and interested in Southern theory. Are there frameworks that we can, so this is in fact a question to all actually, that are there in fact frameworks that we can draw which are rooted in a more locally anchored theoretical framework? So which is something that I'm trying to explore within the context of my subcontinent. But yeah, this is more like a a thought that I'm putting out there. I don't think it's really a question or but this is more like a think aloud and a sort of a nudge to sort of maybe relook at our theoretical framings. Yeah, so Tiffany, over to you, your responses.
Thank you very much for that, Anisha. Walkability in the CBD, specifically on this street, is also a social connector. So we're looking at it as an economic and social connector. Economic mainly on connecting the businesses and also catering to the provisions for the street vendors, but also a social connector because over the weekends, for those who've had the chance to visit Mindimingo Street, especially on Sundays, it's full of photographers. So it has been turned into a business venture where you can go to the CBD, get your photos taken, get a video taken, and it will also capture the views for the most of the landmarks, the provisions such as trees, and also outside Jivanji Gardens, which is a public park, also take advantage of that for scenic purposes and beauty. When it comes to achieving a balance between the interventions and social dynamics, this will all fall under the institutional framework. So planning is basically a political process, and there's a lot of political influence in it, yes. But when it comes to balancing these interventions with social dynamics, I believe if we take a step-by-step or a systems approach in providing what is necessary first, which is an inclusive design, So that will factor in the social dynamics, because we want to move from a vehicle-centered design to a more people-centered design. So we focus for the needs of the people first. What is needed, safe pedestrian crossing, street lighting. You need to ensure the safety, the security, and also the reliability before you go into the other factors, such as integrating the ITMS as well as the energy generating tiles, which will come into implementation based on funding from the government or from external donors. But I believe when it comes to the interventions, we are catering to what is needed first, and that is looking into the provisions for the pedestrians first, and then catering into the businesses and the other externalities.
Wow, wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Nisha, for raising those issues, and Tiffany for responding very fast. We'll allow the rest of the discussion to move to the chat, and please let us keep the chat active, and we shall take a plenary session. We have done at least 1 hour of our allocated time, and we want to take the remaining time, the first 20 or so minutes, to bring our last presenter to share our work. And our last presenter is Olayemi Fumimilayo Dixon. Olayemi, if you can be, I'm sure Karin is going to assist with the presentation. Olayemi will be talking to us about decarbonizing the transport sector through walking and cycling, perspectives from Nigeria. And Olayemi is from the National Center for Technology Management, Nigeria. She's a chartered member of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport and a member Institute of Transport Administration. She's a seasoned researcher with over 13 years of expertise in policy research, evaluation, and review, specializing in technology-driven, knowledge-based development. She holds the position of Assistant Chief Research Officer at the National Center for Technology Management, which is an agency under the Nigerian Federal Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation. Olayemi's professional focus lies in transport planning and policy, emphasizing inclusive transportation, public transport systems, logistics and supply chain management, and urban mobility. Her academic journey includes a BTech in Transport Management Technology from the Federal University of Technology, that is Owerri, a master's degree in technology management with a specialization in transport from the African Institute for Science Policy and Innovation Studies. That is Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife. Currently, she's at the verge of completing a PhD in Transport and Logistics at the School of Transport and Logistics Studies, Lagos State University. She has authored and co-authored publications in esteemed peer-reviewed journals, both internationally and locally, and she has contributed to winning reports and proposals within her field. Olayemi holds several professional memberships and roles, including chartered member of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport and a member of the Chartered Institute of Transport Administration, Nigeria. She's passionate about advancing sustainable and efficient transport systems, and her mission is to promote mobility, accessibility, and well-being, with a particular focus on inclusivity, benefiting all, especially people with disabilities. Olayemi, you have 15 minutes to share your work on decarbonizing the transport sector.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pascaline. Thank you, everyone. I am Mrs. Olayemi Dixon, as Ms. Pascaline has introduced. I will be speaking on decarbonizing the transport sector through walking and cycling in Africa. I'll be looking at the Nigerian perspective. We all know that the issue of climate change is becoming alarming gradually, particularly in Africa. And the global shift is towards sustainability and environmentally friendly practices. And looking at the climate change situation globally at the moment, we can see that it's becoming something of concern. And that is the reason why decarbonizing all the sectors, particularly the transport sector, is very important. And we can also see that our planet is running out of time because of climate change issue, which is becoming so pressing. And statistics have shown, according to the Development Bank, African Development Bank, you can see that the transport sector contributes approximately 24% of total greenhouse gas emissions. That is quite alarming. Africa contributes 24% of GHG emission, and of this percentage, Nigeria contributes the largest. Nigeria is the largest emitter of GHG emission as far as Africa is concerned. Out of this 24% statistics, Nigeria contributes 14%, which is quite alarming. Now, statistics has also revealed that of this 14% GHG emission in Nigeria, the transport sector contributes the most. I'm sure that this is peculiar to most African countries too. The transport sector contributes the most to this emission. Hence the reason why of all the sectors, it is critically important to decarbonize the transport sector. And we all know the attendant challenges that comes with greenhouse gas emission, particularly CO2 emission, and we all know the health implications and some other implications. If the transport sector contributes majorly in Africa, particularly in Nigeria, to this emission, then it is important, highly important, to decarbonize this sector. Why am I looking at the Nigerian perspective? The Nigerian perspective, because of all African countries, Nigeria is the largest emitter of greenhouse gas emission. Now, this presentation, I'm going to be narrowing it down to a particular state in Nigeria, which is Lagos State. Why am I reducing or bringing it down to Lagos State, Nigeria? Because Lagos State is the largest state in Africa, in Nigeria, and the second largest city in Africa. So that is the reason why I am limiting the outcome of my research as regards walking and cycling to Lagos State, because when you mention Nigeria, the next thing that comes to everybody's mind is Lagos State, because Lagos State is a state where most socio-economic activities in Nigeria take place. So that's the reason why Lagos State's popular, and I know that some of us from other African countries would have heard about Lagos State, Nigeria, and its peculiarities. So let me start by mentioning some statistics on carbon emissions in Nigeria. According to statistics, the greenhouse gas cumulative emission from 2010 to 2025 in Nigeria will amount to 11.6 billion. Also, according to data by World Database data website, revealed that emission in Nigeria was estimated to be 130 tons in 2019. Also, according to another statistics, over 90 million metric tons of CO2 annually goes to the transport sector as far as Nigeria is concerned. Statistics by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics in Nigeria revealed that we have 11.8 million vehicles in Nigeria. Talking about CO2 emission, greenhouse gas emission in Nigeria, the transport sector contributes the most, and that is why the emphasis is on the transport sector. Now, if the transport sector contributes the most to CO2 emission, and with the present climate change issue, it is important to decarbonize the Nigerian transport sector. Now, how can we achieve this? Fine, there are several alternatives to decarbonizing the sector, but I think in my own, or from my own perspective as a researcher, the most suitable strategy to decarbonize the Nigerian transport sector is through the promotion of walking and cycling. Fine, the introduction of electric vehicles and other alternatives are there, but the most visible one for now, from my perspective, is decarbonizing through walking and cycling. Now,
I'm sorry, Olayibi, I'm very sorry to interrupt, but please let me know when you want me to shift slides to the next slide. Just say next when you want me to click.
Okay, ma'am. Please can you go to the
Now we can't hear you.
Okay, the statistics on carbon emission in Nigeria have gone past that. Then the next slide after that.
Is this the one?
Yeah, after that, the next one after this. Okay, so we can see that with the above present issue of carbon emission, it is important to decarbonize the transport sector in Nigeria, considering the statistics I have mentioned earlier. So it is important to introduce walking and cycling. Walking and cycling is very important. It should be the most cheapest, the most affordable. But looking at this alternative, there are several challenges to the adoption of walking and cycling in the Nigerian transport sector. Despite the numerous benefits that surrounds walking and cycling Unfortunately, there are several challenges. Please, the next slide, ma'am.
Yes.
Several challenges. And subsequently, we'll be seeing some of those challenges. Now, what are the major challenges facing walking and cycling in Nigeria? These are realistic challenges that hampers the adoption of walking and cycling in Nigeria, but these are glaring challenges, but we cannot just say they are glaring. There are research outcomes that have backed up these challenges by various scholars. Now, one of the challenges is urban planning and policy issue. Urban planning in Nigerian cities has largely favored vehicular traffic. Let me say in Nigeria, our cities are built for vehicles and not for people. Our cities are built for vehicles and not for people. One of the challenges facing walking and cycling. Also, cultural and social perception is a major challenge facing walking and cycling in Nigeria. Societal attitudes towards walking and cycling is a major barrier due to stigmatization. The one people believe if you're not driving, if you're walking, then you're a poor person. That means you cannot afford a car, which is not supposed to be, because the stigmatization is there. So when you see people walking and people driving, so people that walk tend to feel kind of inferior because of the stigmatization, which is not supposed to be so. Another issue that hampers the adoption of walking and cycling in Nigeria is safety concerns. Because our roads are not safe in Nigeria, the issue of safety as far as transportation is concerned in Nigeria has been compromised. Also, infrastructure challenge. Many Nigerian roads lack proper sidewalks, bike paths, and pedestrian crossing. There is a statistics that revealed that 60% of Nigerian roads are not built to accommodate pedestrians, are not built to accommodate walking and cycling, which is the truth. My fellow Nigerians on this platform listening to me right now can attest to this fact that most Nigerian roads are not designed or built to accommodate walking and cycling. Another factor is the environmental factor. Now, having mentioned all these challenges, there is a major challenge to the promotion of walking and cycling in Nigeria, which is the presence of a national transport policy. As it is at the moment in Nigeria, we don't have a national transport policy. And there's this idea that says, well, there is no rule, the people perish. If we don't have a transport policy in Nigeria, then how can we begin to look at decarbonizing the transport sector? How can we begin to look at solutions for the betterment of the Nigerian transport sector? Now, we have a draft policy. The draft policy has been on since 2010, up until now is still a draft. As far as Nigerian transport policy is concerned, we don't have a policy yet, but a draft. And looking at the one for 2010 that has been in public domain, it is only few sections of that draft policy that talked about walking and cycling as far as Nigeria is concerned. So we can see why some of these challenges persist. Where we don't have a policy, then how can we begin to promote walking and cycling in the absence of a national transport policy? Now this brings me down to Lagos State. Why is my focus on Lagos State, Nigeria? Like I said, that Lagos State is the most populated city in Nigeria of over 23 million people. We have the busiest seaports, we have the busiest airports, and we have the busiest road transport system in Lagos State as far as Nigeria is concerned. Because most of the socio-economic activities in Nigeria happen in Lagos State. Please, Ma, can you go to the slide that talked about Lagos State, Nigeria?
Are we on the right slide now, Olayemi?
Oh.
Just checking.
The slide that talked about Lagos State, Nigeria. Thank you. Now, from this slide that talked about Lagos State, Nigeria, which is my major focus as far as decarbonizing the Nigerian transport sector is concerned. Like I said, that we don't have a transport policy nationally, but what is surprising is that as far as Lagos State is concerned, which is the most populous state in Nigeria, they have a state transport policy. We have a Lagos State transport policy. Not only that, we also have a Lagos State non-motorized transport policy that promotes walking and cycling. So we can see why Lagos State, of all the states in Nigeria, is quite peculiar. And like I said, that we have most of the socio-economic activities happen in Lagos State, the busiest airport, the busiest seaport, and the busiest road transport sector. We have it right there in Lagos. From the picture, we can see the population, can see how everywhere is crowded. In Lagos, majorly, this is how most places in Lagos State are usually have because of the overcrowded population. We can see where pedestrians are walking, the vehicles, everything jammed together. Though there are innovations coming up now in the Lagos State transport sector to decongest this sector. Back to the policy, like I said, we don't have a Nigerian national transport policy, but however, we have a Lagos State transport policy and we have a Lagos State non-motorized transport policy. I haven't looked at Lagos State, and in Nigeria, talking about CO2 emission, the Lagos State contribute to the most to GHG emission in Nigeria. The transport sector in Lagos State takes the larger percentage of this GHG emission contribution, CO2 emission contribution. Now, let's go to the challenges facing walking and cycling in Lagos State. I've talked about Lagos State, Nigeria, talked about the population. Now, what are the challenges? In Lagos State, which is a sprawling mega city, the situation facing walking and cycling is particularly alarming. Many pedestrian walkways are littered with obstacles, rendering them very ineffective. While the potential for walkability and cycling exists in Lagos State, many pedestrian pathways are either non-existent or rendered unusable due to various obstructions. Now, what are these common obstacles that face walking and cycling in Lagos State? One is the signpost and public amenities. We have the street trading, where we have street vendors taking over pedestrian walkways, poor maintenance, obstructed pathways, safety concerns. These are common obstacles facing walking and cycling in Lagos State, Nigeria. Next slide, please. Now, like I said earlier, that we have the existence of a non-motorized transport policy in Lagos State, Nigeria. But, however, there is a disconnect. If we have the existence of a non-motorized transport policy to promote walking and cycling by promoting adequate infrastructure in Lagos State, how come we still have several challenges that impede or that encourage walking and cycling? Now, according to the United Nations Habitat and UNEP, in their joint report on walking and cycling in Africa, they classified Nigeria among several other countries as a country with a subnational walking and cycling policy. Why was Nigeria classified as a subnational walking and cycling policy? It is because we don't have a national non-motorized transport policy, but however, we have a state in Nigeria that has a non-motorized transport policy, which is Lagos State. And that is the reason why in the United Nations Habitat document, Nigeria was classified as a subnational, as a country with a subnational walking and cycling policy. However, as far as this policy exists, there is a disconnect because this policy was established in 2018. And it advocates to increase the use of walking, cycling, and public transport by creating a safe and pleasant network of footpaths, cycling tracks, greenways, and other facilities to promote walking and cycling. But up until now, the aim and objectives of this non-motorized transport policy are yet to be achieved. Let's go to the next slide, please.
Olayemi, you have 2 minutes to take us to the end of the presentation, please.
All right, thank you very much. Now, I've talked about the challenges. My subsequent slides will be showing some of the real-life scenarios to actually prove that there are several challenges that impede walking and cycling in Lagos State. Please, next slide. I'll be scrolling as fast as possible through these pictures. This is the outcome of an observatory survey carried out by me to assess pedestrian infrastructures on Lagos State. And my focus was on Lagos mainland and Lagos Island. As far as Lagos State in Nigeria is concerned, we have the mainland and the island. From this picture, we can see several obstructions, vendors blocking the pedestrian walkways, pedestrians struggling to actually even access the pedestrian walkways, exposing them to several dangers. Next slide, please. Next slide. We can see some of those slides showing several areas in Lagos State, Nigeria, where pedestrian walkways has been blocked by a lot of, some of them we have the signposts. Next slide, please. Okay, we can see several vendors blocking the streets. Please, can you go to the previous slide, the one that has the signpost blockage? Yes, thank you very much. We can see there's a particular picture here where we have an obstruction. The pedestrian pathway is clear. The one that has the high-tech signpost. Yes, the one that has the high-tech signpost. Please, please go back again. Yes, we can see, aside that some of these roads are not even built to accommodate pedestrians, some of these roads do not even have pedestrian walkways. Even the ones that have been obstructed by several blockages. You can see a signpost, one of the pictures here, a signpost by an international company, an international construction company building its signpost on the pedestrian walkway here in Nigeria. And nothing has been done. I don't think it's been done. Also, we have several of those pictures where we can see there's a particular picture in some of those. The next one, please. Yes, we can see this particular picture. No, please go back. I have a few minutes left. Please go back. There's a picture where we have an embassy here in Nigeria on the island that practically blocked the whole of the pedestrian walkways with designs, flower designs and all that. And nothing is being done about it. And we have a policy that promotes non-motorized transport in Lagos State, walking and cycling. So we see several challenges. These pictures is just to show as an evidence, the real-time evidence to back up several of these challenges. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, next slide. Next slide. The potential for, thank you very much. So I've shown several pictures that shows that as far as Lagos State is concerned, though I cannot categorically say that all the walkways are not built to accommodate pedestrians, but most of the walkways in Nigeria and in Lagos State are not designed to accommodate pedestrians. Like I said, from those pictures, majority of these roads do not even have pedestrian walkways. Those ones that have been obstructed by several obstacles like we saw in the picture. But however, there's potential for change. How do we create change? Of course, the beauty of every research is to identify a problem and be able to provide solution to that problem. What are the steps that can be taken to actually promote non-motorized transport policy in Nigeria, in Lagos State, and in Africa at large? One is the regulation of street vendors. Two is the investment in infrastructure. Three, policy development. Four, integration of technology. Five, integration of urban planning, of an integrated urban planning system. An urban planning system that is highly inclusive in the planning approach. Six, public awareness campaign is very important. It is important to educate the society on the use of pedestrian walkways. Even from my observatory survey, I discovered that even the pedestrians don't know their rights. They don't know that this walkway is meant to be left cleared, or are meant to be left cleared without obstruction for pedestrians. You can see some of the pictures, the pedestrians will have to even leave the road for the vendors and come down when it is not even comfortable for them. Another strategy is the community engagement. So that brings me to the conclusion. To decarbonize the transport sector in Africa generally, there is need for an urgent reassessment of existing infrastructures, and by prioritizing walking and cycling, cities can not only reduce their carbon footprint, but also enhance the quality of life for their residents. An inclusive and holistic approach focusing on sustainable practices is very important to driving change and securing a greener future for Nigeria, for Lagos State in Nigeria, and for Africa at large. Summarily, governments, civil society, and citizens must come together to advocate for a greener policies that favor walking and cycling.
Thank you. Allow me to cut you short because we need to bring in the other speaker, please. We'll have the discussion in the plenary, Olayami, if you allow me. Thank you so much for your presentation. You have very exciting presentation, but we need to really manage time because we have people moving to other assignments. So thank you so much, and I'll bring our last discussant, Damilola. Damilola, please prepare to come in and share your quick reflections, please. I know we've taken a bit of time, but if you can do your reflections under 3 minutes, we'll appreciate. So Damilola is a seasoned senior civil engineer and a key member of the transportation planning team, as well as the health, safety, and environment team at Ove Arup and Partners Nigeria Limited. She has experience in highway design, transport infrastructure, urban mobility planning, and road safety, contributing significantly to various initiatives. Damilola holds a master's in road and transportation engineering with a thesis focused on transport safety for all road users. This research ignited her commitment to creating inclusive, efficient, and safe transportation networks for everyone. Damilola, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much for the insightful presentation. That's really very insightful. Oh, I appreciate how you have outlined the environmental benefits of walking and cycling. Your emphasis on reducing carbon emissions by promoting non-motorized transport is a practical and necessary step toward greener future. However, while these solutions are very effective in theory and in practicals, I would like to explore their feasibility in Nigeria, which is your case study. For instance, how do we address infrastructure challenges, especially in Lagos State, Nigeria, where sidewalks and cycling paths are limited? And in rural areas where distances are longer, how realistic is it to expect a shift to walking or cycling? Then another point I would like you to address is the touching of the policy and government. From your studies or from your research, how do we bring the stakeholders and the government to know that, okay, these are what the people need? Walking should be prioritized. We have a car-centered design in the Lagos, in Nigeria, especially even in Africa. We have a car-centered designs. But how do we bring the stakeholders and the policymakers, the government to know that, okay, there is a need to shift from car-centered design to a more sustainable infrastructural designs so that people can walk more, and we can encourage people to walk by making sure that all those safeties that have been listed from our presenters are included in our designs. Also, in the areas of designs of roads, we have people that design roads. These are civil engineers. We design roads. I design roads in my office. So when we are designing roads, you know, there are roads that are private, there are roads that are government owned. So how do we bring all these engineers to the know that, okay, when you are designing roads, you have to design a road where you can accommodate pedestrians based on the population and in your future projections of the areas, so that people can have a large pedestrian walkway with all necessary features that are placed. This can encourage people to walk. Also, we design roads in Nigeria that don't have drainages. And these are one of the factors or issues that is facing Lagos State especially. Lagos State is known as a flooded environment because of lack of drainages, and people are not encouraged to walk inside water. You cannot encourage people to walk inside water because of the flood. So how do we bring all these things to the know for the people that design the road and for our government and the stakeholders to ensure that proper things are put in place when it comes to road designs and infrastructures. Then and also to encourage people to have inclusivity in our designs, so that when we are designing, we are not only designing for people, we are also designing for people with disability and mobility challenges, because most of the road we design in Lagos, in Nigeria, they don't cater for people with disabilities, which I think is what we should also encourage our designers and our stakeholders to do. So I would like to hear from you. I would like to hear from your presenters on how we can make sure that, from your research, what do you think that that can be put in place so that the government and the stakeholders can know the needs of encouraging pedestrian walkways in our designs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much. Let me come in. Let me start from the last question. Coming to designing of pedestrian walkways, what should be done? As a transport planner, I've always believed and always canvassed that whenever a transport project is being designed, at the planning phase, the general public should be carried along. Why? Because the general public are the users of whatever infrastructure transport designers, engineers are bringing to the table. It is important to engage the general public in that particular region, in that particular local environment, in that particular state, nationally, whichever size this investment or this construction or this infrastructure is coming in. Every stakeholders at that level should be brought together at the planning phase, at the design phase. So if the general users are carried along, we have stakeholders, and I want us to know that we as individuals are stakeholders too. We are the general public that should be carried along. The general public is inclusive of people with disabilities, women, everyone. They should be invited at the planning phase. What are your needs? What should be put in place? The general public also have a lot to say and to contribute at that planning phase. So it is important for designers, for engineers, even transport planners at the planning phase to carry the general public along, to hear their view on what needs to be done and to be put in place. The reason why we have most of these challenges, even some infrastructures are being constructed and built where they are not even used or necessary, because it's important that the general public be carried along in the transport planning process, right from the design stage. Now, coming to the aspect of infrastructure design in Lagos State and Nigeria, another way that can help, we have seen a lot in Nigeria that most of the federal government transport construction projects, some of them do not even get to the final phase, to the completion phase. Some of them take years before completion. Some of them just become redundant and create problems for the society. But the introduction of the public-private partnership is very important. It is important to incorporate or work with the private. There should be a kind of collaboration between public and private. If the private are being brought, I'm sure that if we look at Nigeria generally, most of the transport constructions that has the collaboration of PPP is usually an interesting one. So public-private partnership in coming up with some of these infrastructures is very important, because I feel the government may not be able to handle the costs of these constructions alone. So it is important to partner with the private. So public-private partnership is very important in the aspect of infrastructure development. And also talking about flooding in Lagos State. Yes, Lagos State, Nigeria is prone, most of the roads are prone to flood. Most of the roads in Nigeria do not have drainage. And that is why we usually have issues with flooding. Aside that, the few ones that have drainage system, all these roadside vendors and all that, even we general public, the drainage by throwing dirt, waste products, we pour it inside the drainage, and at the end of the day, everything becomes blocked. So there is need for sensitization and awareness in that regard, and there is need for strict regulation to also curb the blocking of the available drainage systems in areas where we don't have drainage. It is important for the government at large to also start looking at ways. Thank you.
Sorry, like, someone please, Nelu, please mute yourself, and Olayami, thank you for your questions, your reflections, and I would like to ask to shift now to the last part of this forum. I'm sure many people have been looking forward to the plenary session, and I would like to change how we are going to do this. I'd like to allow, because of time, a round of questions. And I like that the people are going to ask questions to speak. I know there are so many issues coming through the chat, and all the presenters, I request you to head there, and also the discussants pick the issues. We may not really exhaust them in this discussion. If we can take note of them, and this can be a continuing discussion at another time. Karina, I'm sure you're also going to help us with putting everything together, even including the recording, so that the discussion can continue. So allow me at this moment to allow one or two people to ask their questions. Who is willing? Please put your hand up and ask your question. I know there are so many things happening in the chat. We have we need questions to Maria, questions to Tiffany and Eric, and lastly to Olayemi. Neluheni, I don't know whether you want to ask a question or you want me to move to the chat. Who is ready to?
We have a question there by Obed Bore.
Obed Bore, please. Obed?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Hi. I was following. Thank you so much for the presenters. Great insight there from various studies cutting across workability. I'm particularly interested with the Nairobi project. Because I think I had a chance to be there the last few months, and actually I had also a chance to walk through that road they were studying, and I could relate with the issues they were raising. But I have, in fact, I also related with the Shree's comment, the discussant, when she asked about workability as some sort of social connector. And I was throwing in another aspect that could be interesting in terms of social connector and the issue they addressed, which was the market vendors, and the issue of the bus stations. There is a close relationship. I think it's perhaps an area they can touch on or perhaps discuss further on the connection between the bus stations and the paths, or rather the network of walking in Nairobi, and then add that to the vendors. So it looks like the pedestrians will connect the two aspects in terms of other modes of transportation, like minibuses and also the vendors. So that is my question: is how to connect those issues apart from the social aspect of it, the vendors and the minibus transport or bus stations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Obed. I ask the next speaker to be very brief so that we allow a few more people to ask their questions. Thank you. That is directed to Tiffany and Eric from Nairobi. Who is willing to come next? Just one question, and mention who the question is directed to, please.
Okay, am I permitted to speak?
Yes, please. Who is that?
This is Adele Michael.
Adele, please proceed.
So my question is just an observation, and it's directed to Dixon, the last speaker from Okolayemi Dixon. So I just wish she refrained from using the word most. The word sounds so journalistic. This is an academic research. If you are saying most of the people don't use NMTs, or people that want to use NMTs don't have chance to use NMT, don't use the word most. Give us statistics of the road with NMTs, statistics of road without NMTs. I think that will be more academics. But when you say most, a journalist will also say most. So as someone in the academics, try to give statistics of the roads with that encourage walking and the roads that don't encourage walking. So thank you very much. That's just a suggestion.
Thank you so much. Another hand, please.
Yes.
I have a
question.
Musa, please.
Yes. I want to also ask Olayemi just one or two questions regarding her presentation. While I can agree with you to some degree that most Nigerian roads are not having a functional walkway based on physical observation, but if you can have access to those drawings for those design roads, you discover there are so most of them are designed with walkways. Perhaps maybe after the design, the contractor or the clients choose to look the other way and the walkway are not enacted to standard, or to some other extent, most of those walkways are designed and converted to informal streets. They become shops. So you just discover you have the motorway and the walkways are now a mini streets for traders, informal marketing. So I really think if you want to come with a conclusion that most of those walkways don't have a walkway, you should be able to say, okay, this is the design that you're able to collect from the ministry. This is the initial design without a walkway. And this is the final road without a walkway. So I think generalizing it is not really okay based on what I'm thinking. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The last question to be asked, Paul Adeke, your hand is up. That will be the last question that I'm picking.
Okay, thank you. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, can
Hello,
you hear
we can
me?
hear you. Yes, please.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for granting my request. I thank Dixon. I'm also from Nigeria, a lecturer in civil engineering department. I'm a civil engineer by profession. She tried to present a lot of issues concerning the challenges of walking, and I felt I should also point out some few things. I have thrown a question on implementation of policies that promote walkability. I think our challenge at the moment in Nigeria had gone a step further, because now we have issues of climate change to contend with, where we have flooding in most of the cities within the country, thereby denying pedestrians from connecting with their destinations. I think our design standards should start looking in that direction now, on how to design facilities that have resilience to this climate change. And the unfortunate fact is the old designs have not been implemented to the last, as the last speaker pointed out. The next phase of our challenge now is how do we address issues concerning this? I'm just trying to make an observation as a researcher for see how we could consider that in our sustainable planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Before I call upon the speakers, and as you make your reflections, you may not have to respond to everything, but also make your concluding remark in terms of where we are. We have listened to so many similar issues, challenges towards walking. We've had viable, sustainable, innovative innovations, and there's a question coming from the chat. Why is implementation of this innovative, strategies not happening? Why are we not able to implement this? For how long will you continue talking about this? Why is research not able to really show how to implement this? So those are just some of the questions, again, about voices of the pedestrians. Pedestrians do not seem to be heard. How can we best engage the pedestrians? So Maria, I'll ask you to come first, share your quick reflections, and we can call it an afternoon before we bring the last session of the day. Maria, if you can come in first.
Okay, I think, well, there weren't questions addressed directly at me, but I have a few reflections on the questions of how to bring stakeholders. And I think stakeholders should also mean the community. So people that are walking, not only policymakers and technicians, because part of what was said is also having the knowledge of the people that is walking every day and the experience that they face is key to have a good design. So most of these sidewalks that are being occupied and cannot be enjoyed by the pedestrians are also sidewalks that have been designed from the perspective of an engineer that had not consulted and had no experience of walking. So I think part of this bringing in the stakeholders is also kind of acknowledging the knowledge that already exists there, the practices that are already there, into the processes of design and the policy making, and kind of to engage with the fact that most people already walks. So there's not a matter of encouraging people to walk, because most people already walks as a mode of transport. So it's more acknowledging this and how to make it more enjoyable and comfortable and safe. And I would say that why this is not happening, it's a very complex question. It's a very contextual question as well, but I would argue that a fast way of responding to that is saying to look into the power relations that exist and whose values are being put forward and whose benefits are being prioritized in terms of planning in a city, rather than, yeah, as someone said, I don't remember who said it, but planning is a very political issue. So that should be taken into account in the processes of implementation rather than thinking it as a just technical design problem.
Okay. Thank you so much, Maria. Tiffany, if you can come in very briefly.
Thank you. Thank you, Obed, for your question. Just to understand what you're asking, you're trying to understand the connection between the issues we have highlighted in regards to walkability. I'll just start by stating that the inception of our study was based on the perceptions that most of the Nairobi residents have towards walking, in the sense of last and first mile connectivity. So the first issue we noted was how the decision to or not to walk will affect how that affects the use of public transportation. If my way to the bus stop is not favorable to me, or it won't be a good experience, then that will in turn affect my decision when it comes to using public transportation and other things like that. But it was also touching on the economic and social connectivity aspect of it. Economic mainly being like creating a loop within the CBD that link key nodes as well as key economic activities in various areas. So we can have Luthuli Avenue, which is like known for technology, and link it to Biashara Street, where there's the sale of clothes and things like that, all the way linking to City Market, where we have the vending of food and flowers. So the whole aim of this was to create sort of a loop with our pedestrian network within the CBD in order to boost all of these aspects and the overall experience when it comes to walking within the CBD. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Olayemi, please, under 1 minute, we have one more session.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pascaline. For the personal thing about using most, let me change it to many Nigerian roads based on literature. Lack proper sidewalk ways, bike paths, and pedestrian crossing. This was not just the general talk by me, it's based on literature from people like Alozie and Ejiofor and others. And also talking about percentage, statistics also reveal that 60% of Nigerian roads are not built or designed to promote walking and cycling. So let me change the word most to many, if that is okay. And also, like I mentioned earlier, maybe you didn't hear me, that 60% of Nigerian roads are non-motorized. They don't have to be to accommodate walking and cycling. Which other question? Okay, talking about building of these roads. Somebody mentioned that they have some of these designs have but have been taken over by vendors and others. It is important for engineers to come together to look at how, okay, if these walkways are not existing, let's see how we can work together and make it happen. And also for the aspect of policy, like somebody said, that how do we come together as researchers to actually, how we can come together to promote the adoption or the existence of non-motorized transport policy in Nigeria. It is important. We continue to advocate. We continue to make our voice known through the outcome of our researches or through the dissemination of the outcome of our researches. Let the government know that it is important for us to have a national transport policy in Nigeria, as this will serve as a guide towards promoting or towards solving the challenges of the Nigerian transport sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olayemi, for that concluding remark. Yes, let's have the policy, but having the policy is not enough. We need implementation. we need enforcement of the same. Allow me at this moment to bring two very quickly, Sarah and Samuel Adai. I'm not going to introduce you because of time, and I also want to cut short what you really wanted to share with us. I know you wanted to share your journey. Samuel, I'll bring Sarah before you because she needs to move to something else, and they'll just be sharing quick reflection under 2 to 3 minutes where you think the working research agenda should be moving to. Briefly, please. Sarah. Sarah, you are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you very much. And hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you in such platforms. And thank you, Ms. Parshani, for inviting me to share my story and my opinion on the future workability concern. So I grew up in Mekelle, Ethiopia, where walking was and still is more than just a mode of transport. It's an integral part of the majority's daily life. So for me, from navigating the busy markets to walking to distant schools, my feet was my primary vehicle during my primary school age. Then I got the opportunity to a boarding school called Kalamio Special High School, and still I use it to walk long distance together with my friends every evening time to relax that of like that of addiction. So same situation in my campus life also. As I get into the urbanism research in my MSc thesis, I found myself drawn to the overlooked yet fundamental aspect of walking. So I did a research on enhancing livability and squares and streets of my city, Mekelle, focusing on the issue of walking in the city as a dependable and cheap but not pleasant due to the lack of the design consideration for people activities. Since then, active mobility became one of my research focus, and that's why I became a research member of the Collaborative for Action Active Mobility in Africa, also doing my PhD research on retaking streets through pedestrians, and further become a speaker in Walk 21 Portugal, a conference where I meet the VREF family, thanks to my friend Azeb. I am a member of the Global Workability Correspondents Network as an African regional hub leader. I am also a reviewer in the city's health for the special issue workability and mobility justice. So my journey through European cities for different purposes like Venice, Padova, Lisbon of Portugal, Amsterdam, Rotterdam of Netherlands, Vienna of Australia, Kassel, Berlin. They further solidified my interest. The cities, each with their unique character and offered contrasting perspectives on urban design and pedestrian experience. I observed how well designed public spaces, safe crossings, and pedestrian-friendly infrastructure could transform cities into vibrant and walkable environment. So it's promising in my country, Ethiopia, especially the green corridor developments in Addis Ababa. Also, the current movement in my city, Mekelle, as a result of the Kama real life experiment. I hope it has shed the light on the issue for whom our streets should be designed and how they should like to function better. So building on this experiences generally, I believe the working research agenda should focus on the following areas. I will pick 3 points. So the first one has to be prioritizing on pedestrian experience in urban planning, which is through inclusive design, through safe and comfortable routes, and through green infrastructure. And the other one has to be understanding the cultural and social dimensions of walking through community engagement, which is by involving local community in the planning and design of pedestrian spaces to ensure their needs and preferences are met, and through cultural significance by recognizing the cultural and historical importance of walking in different societies and how it shapes urban identities. Also through social interaction by promoting walking as a means of social interaction and community building. The third one is the innovative research methods and tools, we have been listening to different types of tools in the presentation. It was very inspiring. So this can be through digital technologies, which is by utilizing digital tools like GPS tracking, and sensor data to analyze pedestrian behavior and inform urban planning decisions. Also through participatory research, by engaging with diverse stakeholders, including pedestrians, policymakers, and urban planners, to create knowledge and solution. Through interdisciplinary collaboration, also by fostering collaboration between urban planners, architects, engineers, social scientists, also public health experts also, to address the multifaceted aspect of working research. So our research has to focus on prioritizing pedestrian experience in urban planning is one. The second one is understanding the cultural and social dimension of walking. And the third one is the innovative research methods and tools. So I believe that by prioritizing those points in our research agenda, we can pave a way towards creating cities that are more livable, sustainable, and equitable for all. Walking that has been a necessity by now can be a choice and a pleasure and a cornerstone of healthy and vibrant urban in Africa. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah.
I will move to the next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah. Please don't forget to remember to bring back your experience from Italy back home. Thank you. Samuel, please, in 1 minute. We don't want to miss the concluding remarks from Jen Somerton. Thank you so much, Sarah. Samuel, please, in under 1 minute.
All right. Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I would say I think Sarah said a lot. I would say in just 2 points. I will look at the accessibility and inclusivity. The working agenda should address accessibility for vulnerable populations, including children, elderly, individuals with disabilities. In Nigeria, also in other African cities, the research could investigate the barriers this group faces and explore solutions for more inclusive infrastructure. So inclusivity and accessibility is there. And then number 2, lastly, the public health and environmental impacts. So working as the active mode of transport offers significant health and environmental benefits, of course, reduce air pollution, increase physical activity. So research should focus on quantifying these benefits, particularly in urban congested areas, okay, in also African cities and other areas. So also in other African cities, understanding this health implication for people who walk due to limited access to public transport or vehicles can help to shape these policies and intervention into public health and environmental impact. Thank you. I hope I didn't take you over. Thank you.
Thank you. You did it under 1 minute. Thank you so much. Samuel has been with us for quite a long, since we started this journey, and is still with us. Thank you so much. And from me, I would like to really say a very big thank you to all the presenters, to the discussants, to all of us, and to also thank the senior scholars who have been here. They have been doing a very good job in terms of bringing, recruiting the young scholars. So thank you so much. Please don't go. We keep on saying you don't want to go, but don't go. And allow me to also say thank you. We were 51 at one point. We hit 51. Now we are 42. Means that this has been exciting, and I hope the conversation can continue. Let's see you again on 4th of December. And allow me, it is 5 p.m. my time. Allow me to bring Jen Somerton to give some quick concluding remarks. Over to you, Jen.
Thank you very much, Pashalin. I'd just like to say a very huge thank you to all the presenters, the commentators, all of you who have made insightful comments and suggestions in the chat. It's been wonderful. I also like to draw my colleague Karin Henriksson for behind the scenes support in all of this, and David Linderlöf from the VREF Walking Program. He's our coordinator. Most of all, a big thank you to Pashalin, who has guided us very skillfully through the day. And thank you to all. Please put on your screens and wave. We usually do this as a way to wrap up. And very exciting session. And thanks so much for joining us. See you on the 4th of December.
Prof. Jane. Thank you, Prof. Jane.
Connected. Join the
Thank you,
LinkedIn
David.
family.
Thank you, Pascaline. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
If you're not, haven't found us on LinkedIn yet, please do.